Hello, and welcome to Speak English with Olly. Today, we will explore one of the most mysterious criminal cases in American history, the Zodiac Killer unsolved murders in California. This story is slow, detailed, and easy to follow. Listening to this episode can help you understand English better, learn new words, and practice your listening skills. We will travel back to the 1960s and 1970s in California, hear about the victims, the letters sent by the killer, and the mysterious messages that are still unsolved today. So, sit back, relax, and let us begin the story of the Zodiac Killer. In the late 1960s, Northern California was a place of sunshine, beaches, and busy towns. But in the city of Benicia and the nearby Vallejo, a shadow of fear began to appear. On the evening of December 20th, 1968, two young people were parked in a car near a quiet road. Their names were David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. Suddenly, a man with a gun came to their car. He shot them both. David was killed instantly. Betty Lou was also killed. The police arrived quickly, but there were few clues. No fingerprints, no clear description of the killer. The people in the town were shocked. Who could do something so terrible and why? A few months later, more attacks happened. Couples in cars, walking at night, and even strangers were attacked. The police had no idea who was responsible. Then strange letters began to arrive. The letters were sent to newspapers and the police. In these letters, the writer claimed to be the killer. He called himself the Zodiac. He wrote about the murders and included puzzles and codes. Some of these messages were never solved. The Zodiac's letters created fear and curiosity at the same time. People were scared to go out at night. The newspapers printed every letter, and the killer seemed to enjoy the attention. The attacks and the letters continued for many years. The police tried their best to catch him, but the Zodiac always disappeared. Northern California would never forget the fear and mystery of this killer. After the first murders in 1968, the Zodiac Killer became known not only for his attacks but also for his letters and codes. These letters were sent to the police and newspapers. Some of them included strange ciphers or secret codes, which he said would reveal his identity. The letters often began with a greeting, then described the crimes in a way that was both calm and frightening. He claimed responsibility for murders that the police had not yet solved. In some letters, he threatened more attacks, making people live in fear. One of the most famous letters was sent in July 1969 to three newspapers: the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. In this letter, the Zodiac included a cipher with 408 symbols. He said that solving the code would reveal who he was. The newspapers printed the letters and the ciphers. Readers tried to solve the codes at home, but only part of the message was understood. The killer wrote, "I like killing because it is so much fun." This shocked the public. It also showed that he enjoyed the attention from the police and the newspapers. The Zodiac's letters created fear across California. People were afraid to drive alone at night, to park in quiet places, or to go on dates in their cars. Parents warned their children, and towns like Vallejo, Benicia, and San Francisco were full of worry. The police tried many methods to catch the killer. They looked at handwriting, fingerprints, and the details in the letters. They interviewed witnesses who saw suspicious men near the crime scenes. But the Zodiac always stayed one step ahead. He seemed to know how to disappear into the night without leaving clear clues. Even today, some of the Zodiac ciphers remain unsolved. Many people, from detectives to amateur codebreakers, have tried to decode his messages. These codes add another layer of mystery to the story. The letters, the puzzles, and the attacks made the Zodiac Killer a legend, a figure both terrifying and mysterious. Northern California had never seen a criminal like him, and his story would continue for many years. After the first murders and the letters, the Zodiac Killer continued his attacks. People in Northern California lived in constant fear. No one knew where he would strike next or who he would target. One of the most famous attacks happened on July 4, 1969. Two young people, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, were not involved in this attack, but the Zodiac had already created fear in the area. Later, he targeted couples sitting in cars in quiet places, known as lovers' lanes. These attacks were planned carefully. He often approached quietly, sometimes in a car, and sometimes by walking to the victim's car. On September 27, 1969, the Zodiac attacked Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard at Lake Berryessa. He wore a mask and a hood to hide his face. He tied the couple with rope and attacked them with a knife. Cecilia Shepard was killed, and Brian Hartnell survived with serious injuries. The killer left behind strange clues. On the body of Cecilia Shepard, he carved a symbol, a circle with a cross through it. This symbol became famous and was later used in his letters as a signature. People were terrified to go out at night. Parents warned their children not to talk to strangers. Young couples avoided going to quiet places. Even towns that had once felt safe, like Vallejo and San Francisco, now felt dangerous. The police were under enormous pressure. Detectives from different cities worked together, trying to connect the murders. They studied the letters, the symbols, and the patterns of attacks. But the Zodiac Killer was clever. He sometimes taunted the police in his letters, showing he knew they were trying to catch him. Meanwhile, the newspapers continued to print his messages. Every letter made the story even more famous. The public became obsessed with the mystery, and the Zodiac's name spread across the United States. People wanted to know who he was and why he was killing. Even though some letters and attacks were reported, the Zodiac always escaped without being caught. Each new crime added to the fear, the mystery, and the legend of the Zodiac Killer. Northern California would never forget these months of terror. The story of the Zodiac was no longer just about murders. It was about a shadow in the night, a mind that remained a puzzle, and a fear that touched everyone. As the attacks and letters continued, the police worked tirelessly to find the Zodiac Killer. Detectives from Vallejo, Benicia, and San Francisco joined forces. They studied every crime scene, every letter, and every clue. But the killer left almost no evidence. He was careful and clever, and he often disappeared before the police could catch him. The police tried many methods. They checked fingerprints, handwriting, and even car descriptions. Witnesses were asked to give descriptions of suspicious men. Some people said they saw a man near the scenes, sometimes in a car, sometimes walking. But none of the descriptions matched a clear suspect. The Zodiac continued to send letters. Some letters were funny and mocking, others were threatening. He often included ciphers, secret codes made of letters and symbols. Some ciphers were solved, others remain unsolved to this day. In one famous letter, he claimed to have killed 37 people, but the police could only confirm 7 attacks or murders linked to him. This made the case even more frightening, because the public did not know if he was telling the truth or exaggerating. The newspapers played an important role. They published the Zodiac's letters and ciphers. Some readers tried to solve the codes themselves. This gave the killer attention and power. He seemed to enjoy being in the news and making the public afraid. Despite the best efforts of the police, the killer remained free. Each new letter reminded everyone that the Zodiac could strike again at any time. People stopped going out alone at night, couples avoided quiet places, and the fear in Northern California grew. The investigation became one of the most famous in American history. Detectives worked for years, but the case was full of mysteries. The Zodiac left a shadow over the region, a puzzle that has never been completely solved. After the attacks in the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Zodiac Killer became famous across California and the United States. His letters were no longer just private messages to the police. They were printed in newspapers and read by thousands of people. The letters were strange and frightening. Some included threats, some included codes and puzzles, and some simply mocked the police for not catching him. The Zodiac seemed to enjoy the attention. Every time a newspaper printed his letter, he felt more powerful. One of his letters, sent in October 1969, included a drawing of his symbol, a circle with a cross through it. He signed the letter with this symbol and wrote about murders that he claimed to have done. The letter challenged the police and the public, daring anyone to solve his codes. The newspapers helped the Zodiac become famous, but this also scared the public. People were afraid to park their cars in quiet places. Couples avoided lonely roads. Even in busy cities like San Francisco, people watched the streets carefully, unsure if the Zodiac could appear anywhere. The police tried to use the letters to find him. They looked at handwriting, paper, and postmarks to see where the letters came from. They studied the codes carefully. Some codes were solved, revealing threats and claims of murder. Others remained unsolved, keeping the mystery alive. The Zodiac continued to send letters over the next few years. He promised more killings, but the attacks became less frequent. Even though the murders slowed, the letters kept fear alive. People were reminded that the killer was still out there, somewhere, unseen and unknown. By the mid-1970s, the Zodiac's letters became rarer. The attacks stopped, but the mystery never ended. Detectives, journalists, and amateur codebreakers continued to study the case. Every new theory, every attempted solution, added to the legend of the Zodiac Killer. The story of the Zodiac is not only about the murders. It is about fear, mystery, and puzzles. It is about a shadow moving through California, leaving questions that have never been answered. Over the years, many people have tried to find out who the Zodiac Killer really was. Police investigated hundreds of suspects. Some were serious, others were only rumors. But no one was ever arrested or convicted for all of the crimes. One suspect was Arthur Lee Allen, a man from Vallejo. Police thought he might be the killer because of certain evidence, like his interest in codes and weapons. But there was never enough proof, and Allen denied being the Zodiac. He died in 1992, and the case remained unsolved. Other suspects included men who lived near the crime scenes or had connections to the victims. Some detectives believed the killer might have had special knowledge of the police, while others thought he was a disturbed person hiding in plain sight. Even today, amateur investigators and professional detectives try to solve the Zodiac case. Some have studied handwriting, others have examined the codes in his letters. A few ciphers have been solved, but some remain unbroken mysteries. The Zodiac Killer's story left a lasting mark on California and the United States. He changed the way people thought about safety. Parents warned their children, couples avoided quiet roads, and towns remained on alert for months and years. The mystery is also remembered in newspapers, books, movies, and documentaries. People are fascinated by the puzzle of the Zodiac Killer, a criminal who attacked, sent letters, and disappeared without a trace. Even though the murders stopped, and many years have passed, the fear and curiosity never completely disappeared. The Zodiac Killer is a reminder of how one person can create mystery, fear, and questions that last for decades. One of the most famous parts of the Zodiac Killer story is his codes and ciphers. He sent letters to the police and newspapers that included symbols, letters, and numbers arranged in puzzles. Some codes were solved, but others are still unsolved today. The first cipher, sent in July 1969, was cracked by a team of amateur codebreakers. It revealed part of the killer's message, but it did not tell his name or identity. The letters made the public realize that the Zodiac was clever and dangerous. He continued to send letters with puzzles and threats. One letter said he would kill again if the newspapers did not print his messages. Another letter included the symbol of a circle with a cross, which became his signature. People began to recognize the symbol and associate it with fear. The codes fascinated people. Some tried to solve them at home, some studied them professionally, and some became obsessed with the mystery. The Zodiac seemed to enjoy this attention. His letters were carefully written, full of mistakes designed to confuse, and sometimes included jokes about the police. Even though decades have passed, some of the Zodiac's codes remain unsolved. Historians, cryptographers, and true crime fans still study them today. Every time someone publishes a new theory or attempts a solution, the story becomes alive again. The mystery of the Zodiac is more than the murders. It is about fear, curiosity, and questions that have no answers. People want to know who he was, why he killed, and why he sent letters. Yet, after more than 50 years, the answers are still unknown. The letters, the ciphers, and the attacks created a legend. A story of a killer who could hide in plain sight, taunt the police, and remain a mystery for generations. As the Zodiac Killer continued sending letters and attacking in Northern California, the fear among the public grew. People were careful about going out at night. Couples avoided quiet roads and lovers' lanes. Parents warned their children not to talk to strangers. At the same time, the media made the story famous. Newspapers printed every letter, every cipher, and every threat. Television programs and magazines reported on the attacks. The Zodiac Killer became known across the United States. Some people were terrified, others were fascinated by the mystery. The killer seemed to enjoy this attention. His letters often mocked the police for not catching him. He bragged about the murders and included puzzles that teased the public. Each letter reminded everyone that he could strike again at any time. The police tried new methods to catch him. They used handwriting experts, questioned hundreds of witnesses, and studied every clue carefully. Some letters included fingerprints or handwriting that police hoped could identify the killer. But the Zodiac always escaped capture. Even today, the Zodiac Killer remains one of the most famous unsolved criminal cases in American history. Some letters and ciphers have been solved, but many remain unsolved, keeping the story alive. True crime enthusiasts, historians, and amateur detectives continue to search for answers. The story of the Zodiac is not only about his attacks. It is also about fear, mystery, and the curiosity of people. The letters, the ciphers, and the crimes created a shadow over California, a shadow that has lasted for decades. After the attacks, letters, and ciphers, the Zodiac Killer disappeared from public view. No one knows what happened to him. Did he die? Did he move to another state? Or did he simply stop killing? These questions remain unanswered. The police never caught him. Many suspects were investigated, but none were proven to be the Zodiac. Some people solved parts of his ciphers, but his true identity is still unknown. Even today, detectives and researchers continue to study the case, hoping for new clues. The Zodiac story left a lasting mark. He changed the way people thought about safety, crime, and fear. Families warned their children. Couples avoided being alone in quiet places. Towns remained on alert. His letters, with their codes and threats, created a legend that continues to fascinate people all over the world. The story of the Zodiac Killer is a reminder of how one person can create mystery, fear, and questions that last for decades. Even after more than 50 years, the identity of the Zodiac remains a secret. His letters and ciphers continue to puzzle experts and true crime fans alike. And so, the mystery of the Zodiac Killer remains unsolved, a shadow in California's history, a story of crime, fear, and curiosity, and a story that will continue to be told for generations. Thank you for watching this episode of Speak English with Olly. Remember, learning from history helps us stay aware, think carefully, and make better choices. If you enjoyed this episode, you can practice your English by listening again and learning new words from the story. Stay curious, stay safe, and see you in the next episode.